Welcome, friends. I'm excited to talk to you today about reparative genealogy and how you can be an important part. This presentation is a collaboration with WikiTree's US Black Heritage Project and Coming to the Table's linked Descendants. Through our partnership, we have made so much more progress in the work we'll be talking about today. First, a little bit about me. My name is Emmeline Macbeth. I'm a genetic genealogist who specializes in African American and reparative genealogy and the founder and a project leader of WikiTree's US Black Heritage Project. I'll explain in a minute how that journey started for me. What makes me happier than anything in the world is helping people connect to their family story, their family trees. I believe everyone should have equal access to those trees with no barriers because family trees offer connection to family, to community, to the past, to culture. And I believe these connections can make a person stronger. I want to spend a moment on why reparative genealogy is needed for those who may be new to the concept of reparative genealogy. There's a long list of reasons, but that would be an entire presentation on itself. So let me just give you two of the biggest ones. First, there were approximately over 10 million enslaved ancestors throughout the history of the USA, and on a regular basis, a large number of them were sold away from each other, often never to see each other again. Children were sold away from parents, husbands from wives. When slavery ended, many enslaved ancestors tried to reconnect with their family. Some were successful, many were not. As far as I know, there was never any kind of intentional effort to reconnect families at that time, but we can do it now in family trees, and we can help reunite the descendant cousins. Second, for generations, families of color have been excluded from the general genealogy space. This means a couple of things. It means systems were not created to accommodate the needs of disconnected families and enslaved ancestors for genealogy. When genealogy came online, websites did not accommodate those needs. It's only in the last couple of years that we've started seeing some helpful changes to some of the websites to better tell the family story. It also means documents for family of color were at the bottom of the priority list for digitization. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're generally still at the bottom of the list today, which of course means we have fewer records to work with than are actually available. Why is this such a big problem overall? It means a smaller online presence in general for African American families looking for more family information to start building their trees. Reparative genealogy can help change that. When did reparative genealogy begin? I honestly can't even tell you because it's that brand new. When I started the US Black Heritage Project in 2020, I searched around for organizations who were doing what I envisioned, and I could find almost nothing on the topic. I don't believe it's because no one was doing this kind of work, but rather no one was doing it on a widespread scale. I'd like to give credit to the Beyond Kin project that started around 2016 for spreading the word that the way to connect descendants to their enslaved ancestors was through landowner documents. And since their beginnings, they have started many people on the pathway to this work, and they continue to support and encourage that work. The GU272 or Georgetown University Memory Project was probably not the first project to document an entire enslaved community and link them to their descendants, and it's definitely not the only one. However, it was very widely publicized. This project was started around 2016 or 2017 and is hosted at the American Ancestors website. They documented the original 272 ancestors enslaved by the Jesuits and sold between 1838 and 1843. Plus additional ancestors they discovered through the research, and then brought them from that time forward. For me, when I first saw the GU272 research, it sparked a light of hope that yes, we could connect all of the descendants to their enslaved ancestors, one community at a time. And I'm going to include WikiTree's US Black Heritage Project here because we are now the largest public free online database of connected African American families and enslaved ancestors. As you can see, we do have some work to do to spread the word about reparative genealogy. When you do an internet search today about the topic, it's still very underrepresented. Let's talk about the goals of reparative genealogy before we start talking about how to do reparative genealogy. Reparative genealogy is a very powerful tool, and it's about more than just building family trees. It allows us to see firsthand the evidence of harm caused by slavery and racism. This in turn helps us to more easily share and explain this information with others. Through family trees, it restores family connections that were broken by slavery and racism. It's a tool for repairing relationships across the nation that never could have been repaired in earlier times. It allows us to see the historical evidence of disparities between the enslaved and the enslaving communities and how those disparities continue to pass down through the generations. Family trees give a person a stronger sense of self and a stronger sense of community. By helping the Black community to have easy and free access to full family trees, we play a part in community empowerment. It's an incredible educational tool. There's no better way to see where we started to where we are today than through the actual documents and the processes we use in reparative genealogy. I would also like to add here the fact that reparative genealogy is an excellent way to make progress in repair, restoration, and healing while we're enduring a movement that seeks to destroy equity and rewrite history into a pretty fantasy story where everyone was always happy and always doing what was right. What I love about reparative genealogy is the fact that we're just building family trees, right? So who can fault us for that? I can't stress enough how powerful reparative genealogy is. However, we have over 150 years worth of work to do, and that is a lot of work. To connect the dots from point A, the starting point, to point Z, all the goals met, we have a lot of dots to fill in. Millions of dots, millions of data points, millions of people to account for. Imagine each of these dots on this slide contains 10 million dots more inside, and so on. And the only way to collect and then connect all these dots, this many dots, is one, through collaborative efforts, and two, a lot of people contributing dots. Put simply, it's a numbers game. If 2 plus 2 equals 4, then 1 million dots needs 1 million people contributing 1 dot, or 500,000 people contributing 2 dots, and so on. Therefore, the more people who can contribute to the work, the more work we can get done. There are 3 main points I'd like for you to come away with today from this presentation. To get to point Z faster and better, we need everyone to contribute at least 1 dot, 1 contribution. Everyone, and I do mean everyone, can contribute something. You do not have to be a genealogist to contribute to reparative genealogy. Here's an example. My son doesn't give a fig for genealogy, much to my despair, but he helps with the US Black Heritage Project Notables team because he's an author who enjoys learning about the lives and culture of people from different time periods, and he wants to help. He's not a genealogist, but he's already contributed at least 5,000 dots, 5,000 contributions to help us. Whether it's 1 dot, 100 dots, or 1,000 dots, if everyone contributes what they can, those dots add up together will eventually make 1 million dots. The US Black Heritage Project started with a small handful of family profiles in 2020, but thanks to the combined efforts of hundreds of WikiTree members, our database just reached 500,000 family profiles last month. That's 500,000. Imagine where we'd be now if everyone who hasn't helped yet added just 1 new family cluster a month. The best way to meet our goals is for everyone to contribute based on their strengths. Work smarter, not harder, is one of the mottos of the US Black Heritage Project. Efficiency doesn't come from asking the experienced oceanographer to come onto dry land and teach preschoolers their ABCs, while we send the seasoned preschool teacher into the depths of the ocean. Back to the example of my son who doesn't want to do genealogy, but is actually doing genealogy, he just doesn't realize it. As an author who writes some historical novels, he has strengths in research, understanding what is accurate for different time periods, writing biographies, and the coolest thing to me is he can identify what time period a photo is from based on the clothing and hairstyles. My son puts these skills to work creating or improving profiles for our Black notables. He finds photos we're allowed to post on their profiles. He also helps when someone isn't sure a photo is truly of the person it's been identified as. He can take a look at it and tell them if it's the right time period or not. That's a lot of help from someone who doesn't want anything to do with genealogy. But he does want to help our country heal in whatever way he can, and this is how he does it. While I'm taking you through the many tasks today that we need help with, I'd like you to consider this phrase: make a difference where you're at. In 2020, when the civil rights riots following Breonna Taylor and George Floyd's deaths were at a fever pitch and happening practically in my own backyard when I lived in Seattle, and the emergency sirens were going off constantly, I became angry, afraid, and honestly, I was feeling quite helpless and very desperate. I felt like my country was about to implode, and there was absolutely nothing I could do that would make a difference to any of it. But the message that kept whispering on the winds in my direction during those months as I sought for answers were these: make a difference where you're at. At first, I said to myself, how can I do that? I'm chronically ill. I don't have much energy. I can't go out and protest. And I honestly don't want anything to do with politics. That's definitely not my happy place. What else is there? Make a difference where you're at. It just kept repeating itself in my head. And then several things happened all within a few months that changed everything for me. I was promoted as a project leader at WikiTree. I was then told there was no project leader for what at that time was called the African American Project. And then I called up my vision from a few years earlier of creating the largest database of connected African American families so everyone had a starting place to build their family tree. That was around 2018, and I had been struggling as a genetic genealogist because there weren't enough online African American trees to use as a reference point to make progress using DNA to find family. Because of all these things coming together, in June of 2020, the US Black Heritage Project was born. As we started, I strongly felt at that time that if we only managed 100 family trees in the first year, something was better than nothing. We would at least be making a difference for someone. So I stepped up to use my skills as a professional genealogist to make that difference. I had absolutely no clue what I was really in for at the time. I had a lot to learn. And I had a lot of opposition at first. People were really afraid of what we were talking about doing because they didn't understand. But I stuck to one of my favorite sayings: go big or go home. I had absolutely nothing to lose. Making a difference where I was at that time meant to me using my skills as a professional genealogist. One more thing that make a difference where you're at can mean is not just your skill sets, but your skill level. Back in October, Suzanne Campbell-Lowe gave a presentation at the Link Descendants on this competency funnel that she developed after we began a conversation that began something like this. I'm not sure people understand that doing reparative genealogy is a journey. They can't just show up at the door one day and expect to do advanced genealogy work, especially if they've never even done any genealogy. Suzanne, let's visualize that journey like a funnel. Well, I'm sure her reply was far more eloquent, but you get the idea. The idea of the funnel is that everyone starts at the top with an interest in reparative genealogy. Yes, I want to help connect enslaved ancestors to their family and their descendants. Yes, I want to repair and heal our country through genealogy. But there are certain skill sets that need to be acquired before you're ready to enter the bottom of the funnel, which is actually doing the work. Link Descendants does have a copy of the PDF that's available for this funnel, and it has resources available for each level of the funnel to help people learn the information and skills that they need to progress through it. So the first level, you start with an interest. I want to help. And then the second level is I have genealogy skills and I'm familiar with anti racism work. Honestly, in order to do reparative genealogy, you do have to have a little bit of a sense of anti racism work and how that applies, which is the next step, to genealogy skills. And then once you have those basic skills and you continue to improve upon those basic skills, you are ready to do reparative genealogy. In order to do reparative genealogy in a powerful way, which I'll talk about in a minute, you need to become familiar with the website WikiTree, which is where we're doing this work. And then become familiar with the WikiTree's US Black Heritage Project, our goals and how we work, and some of our processes, and then you are doing the work. I want to point out a couple of important things here. You will notice that I equate reparative genealogy with the work of the US Black Heritage Project. Why do I think that's important? Because remember, I said reaching our goals is a numbers game. If those 1 million people contributing dots contribute them in a million different places, we haven't really made any progress. It doesn't fit the ideal of working smarter, not harder. But by pooling all of our work in one place, we prevent repeating the same research that's already been done, so we can move on to new research and we can make the information available to others who can then build upon that research with new information. Plus, best of all, by bringing the information to WikiTree, it's easily and freely accessible to all descendants. No login is required to see it. This work is not very powerful if we're keeping the information to ourselves and hoping someone will simply stumble upon it one day. So yes, please, whatever it takes to bring your dots, your contributions to the US Black Heritage Project's database, bring them. And the US Black Heritage Project can and will help you to migrate that information. I'd also like to point out that WikiTree is very well Google crawled, which means that if someone does a Google search and is looking for their family, WikiTree is going to be one of the first things that pops up as a result at the top. The second thing I'd like to point out about this funnel is we fully expect that not everyone who begins at the top of the funnel will end up at the bottom. And why is that? Some people will find they are happier on another tier of the funnel. Some people will realize there are other dots they would prefer to contribute that aren't the meats and potatoes of connecting enslaved ancestors to their family. And that's okay. Remember the takeaways. Everyone can contribute something to the process, and I hope you'll make a difference where you're at. Where you're at may not be doing the actual genealogy research, but you have other dots we desperately need to make the research happen. And finally, I want to point out that if you're at the top of the funnel just getting your feet wet, you don't need to wait for more experience or knowledge to start helping. There is so much you can do today, as you'll see now. I have broken our long list of tasks into groups by type of work. I originally was going to put these in order from beginner to advanced tasks, but I realized what's easy for me might be hard for you, and what's easy for you might be hard for me. You'll notice that genealogy is only one of the groups of tasks needed to meet the goals of reparative genealogy. And this list I'm about to share is in no way comprehensive. I hope to continue to add to it so we have the most complete list of tasks possible. As I talk today, I'd like to see sparks of ideas or imagine sparks of ideas as you think about which dots you could contribute using your unique skills and talents, or new dots that aren't on the list. Maybe you don't have the skills to complete one of the tasks, but it intrigues you enough that you will decide to learn more about it so you can start doing it. Or maybe you'll learn more about it and you'll decide that task isn't the right fit. That's okay too. There are plenty more tasks to choose from. Whether you have time for 1 dot a month or 1,000, your dot is extremely valuable to meeting the goals in reparative genealogy. So let's get to the list. I started with documents because this is one of the biggest barriers to the work of reparative genealogy. There is not enough easy access to the records and information we need. There are millions upon millions of records that have never been digitized, probably millions upon millions that have never even been seen. Before I start on this first list of tasks, I'd like to share why I mentioned the Family Search Research Centers multiple times. FamilySearch.org is a free genealogy website that has billions, yes, billions of genealogy records available from around the world. And all you have to do to access them is create a free account. This website is sponsored by the LDS Church because family tree research is very important to them. They believe everyone should have access to a full family tree. However, not all of their records are available online, and you have to go into one of their 6,000 plus local centers in the U.S. to see those records. Free research help is also available in the centers. The Family Search Centers also are dedicated to digitizing as many records as they can, which means they are willing to help with digitization projects if they have the volunteers or equipment available in your area. This is a valuable free resource to consider if acquiring documents sounds like something you'd like to help with. I will mention several times to find out what's available in your area. Finding out may mean making phone calls, talking to leaders in your local groups, and doing internet searches. You may wish to speak to someone at the local Chamber of Commerce, Historical Society, Genealogy Group, or Family Search Center. Think of all the possible locations that may house records. All that being said, let's talk about a few of the tasks you could do to help with easy access to records. As I read through these tasks, see if any of these light a spark for you. Go through the boxes of saved photographs, cards, or school paperwork your relatives left you. Sometimes stories have been written on the backs of photos. The paperwork may reveal a particular school, friends, or relative you had, or someone who owned something or where they owned something. These don't necessarily need to be from slavery era. Learning more about earlier time periods in your family's community can help give more context to the work. If you find anything that's helpful, digitize it, and if possible, upload it online to make it available for others. Ask around your family circles about any existing documents held by the family from slavery time. If you find any, definitely digitize them and get them uploaded online. Digitization and sharing is the best way to preserve potentially vulnerable data. If you have paper copies of something and something happens to them, once they're gone, that information is gone, and we don't want to lose it. Like or follow organizations on social media who are preserving records. You don't have to donate to make any difference. Any engagement can help their grant fundraising efforts and can boost their public presence, which will bring others to their site. And those people may be future volunteers, future contributors. This is an easy task that everyone can do. If you can read old handwriting, transcribe handwritten legal document sets in person at your local records repository, and these would be records that aren't allowed to be digitized. Learn how to cite the source and include a citation. Many of these documents are extremely hard to read and require transcription to make use of the data. Talk to the U.S. Black Heritage Project about how to share these transcriptions. Transcribe handwritten legal documents or document sets online per request. As a matter of fact, we have a Discord server for the U.S. Black Heritage Project, and we have an entire channel just for these kinds of requests because many people cannot read the older handwriting, or sometimes the older handwriting is really difficult and we need a couple people to look at the handwriting to determine what it says. Conduct oral interviews within your family circles to document stories of life experiences or of family stories regarding the family from slavery time. A lot of oral family history has been passed down through families going all the way back to slavery time. The more we can get written down before it gets lost or changes, the better. Because as you know, information can get slightly altered as it passes from one person to the next or one generation to the next. And this is extremely precious information that we may not be able to find anywhere else. Conduct oral interviews of Black elders in your local community. with their permission, transcribe those interviews and make them available online. If you have audio files of interviews, find a way to store them online for family use. Please remember to consider the privacy of the living when sharing any interviews. Talk to your local Family Search Research Center about starting an interview program with Black elders in your local community and the possibility of making the interviews available through the Family Search website, as well as helping recruit local volunteers to help. Find out what organizations in your local area, such as university, historical societies, vital records, etc., house records. Find out what records they have which have not been digitized. Find out what it would take to complete digitization. These do not need to necessarily be just of slavery era documents, although those would definitely be our priority. We need to fill in all the dots between the descendants and the enslaved ancestors, so all kinds of documents naming people can help. Find out if there are any digitization projects currently in progress in your area and volunteer to help. If you live in a state that was a state during slavery era, find out about local histories that may pertain specifically to the slavery era. Find out if these local histories have been preserved and digitized. If not, find out what it will take to do so. This may include oral interviews or scanning documents. If you live in a state that was not a state during the slavery era, find out about local histories during the years before the Civil War or right after. What was the narrative for Black families in the community? Find out if these local histories have been preserved and digitized. If not, find out what it would take to do so. This may include oral interviews or scanning documents. This might be key information in linking families back in time to their ancestors. Speak to local Black churches to see if they have any record preservation needs that you could help problem solve. Many Black churches not only have records about the people involved with the church itself, but they house family histories as well. Can you help digitize and transcribe them and put them online? Speak to local Black churches to see if you can help them with oral history preservation. I'd like to add here, it's best not to show up on church doorsteps and proclaim, "I'm here to solve all of your digitization and preservation problems." Check your local area first to see if there's a group who is already working on these kinds of preservation efforts. If not, send an email to a church elder to explain your mission of reparative genealogy and how you would like to help the efforts in your community. They may already have some ideas of projects they'd like to see happen, and maybe you can help volunteer with those. Go in person to request or retrieve a document at your local records repository upon request. Being a member of WikiTree is a great way to connect with people who may have these kinds of requests, since it's a regular kind of thing that happens every day. If you live near a Family Search Research Center, do lookups upon requests for researchers and send them copies of documents. Again, these are kinds of requests we may see on WikiTree. Find out if the Family Search Research Center near you is working with any current local digitization projects. If so, volunteer to help. Going back to the list of organizations that house records in your local area, are there any records specifically pertaining to slavery era work or African American families? Talk to them about the importance of online access to the information for the descendants. If the organizations will not allow you or anyone else to digitize them, find local or even national support, which may include political lobbying, to make those documents accessible to descendants on a national level. Many records are not available unless you walk in the door to see them for yourself, and this is not accessible to someone who lives across the country. Many auction houses sell slavery era or African American family ephemera or documents. Talk to your local auction house about making digitized copies available for genealogy purposes. Help advocate for policies that support the digitization of records related to enslaved ancestors. This is a broader stroke of the records problem. Set up a fund to buy documents that will help reconnect Black families. There are many documents that have been sold off by families and organizations and are purchased by private buyers, never to be seen again. There are also cases where there are documents that have to be purchased, such as birth, marriage, or death certificates, because those are not going to be, certain time periods are never going to be digitized by the government and put online for free. The International African American Museum at iaamuseum.org is another valuable resource to consider for document and family ephemera preservation. They are currently digitizing and making available several records collections. If you choose to help make more digitized records available, you can contact both Family Search and IAM Museum to see which may be able to house those records and make them available to the public. Again, this list is by no means comprehensive. Maybe you have some ideas forming of how you can get more documents into the hands of genealogists who need them to reconstruct family trees. I've been asked if Oprah Winfrey had a grant available for $1 million for anything, what would I ask for? My first answer as a genetic genealogist, of course, is DNA tests for everyone. DNA is connecting families in a way we've never been able to connect them before. I consider it an absolute miracle. And your DNA may be the clue a family has been waiting for. I, of course, want everyone to take a DNA test because I know the more DNA data we have to work with, the faster we can make connections. However, using DNA has its risks, and you need to be aware of that. First, you need to familiarize yourself with the privacy and sharing terms of any DNA company you test with. Second, it's important for everyone to understand that when used incorrectly, DNA can have negative or even devastating effects on families. I've seen people incorrectly identify birth parents, for instance, causing damage to relationships and broken hearts when the correct birth parents were later identified. DNA can potentially reveal family secrets that people aren't ready to share or ready to learn about. It can also reveal criminals and crimes. Just like a car, it's a wonderful and useful tool. But you need to first read the driver's manual, learn the basics of what's inside a car, then learn how to drive the car around the block a few times before you can confidently drive yourself or passengers around town. Let's take these tests in order from easy to difficult. First, take a DNA test. I personally recommend Ancestry DNA because of their privacy policy, having the largest database, easy sharing with others, and easy access to family trees. I can find birth parents there in as little as 2 hours, whereas it may take me weeks or months elsewhere, thanks to their robust database. Men, take a Y DNA test at FTDNA, Family Tree DNA. The Y DNA test is more costly, although it does go on sale on occasion, but it can be valuable for a descendant who's trying to determine their paternal ancestors. Because fewer people have taken a Y DNA test, your test could make a huge difference. mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA, is another type of DNA test also available through FTDNA, Family Tree DNA. This is available for both men and women, and it follows only the maternal line. This is a test that is more forward-thinking. In other words, as more people test over time, the more value it will give to the testers. The testing pool is still currently small. When a DNA cousin messages you, answer their questions quickly and to the best of your ability. Check often for messages. You won't always get an email notification. So your message may be sitting there for months before you even realize you have one if you don't intentionally go check. Find out how to sort your DNA matches using the Leeds method. You can Google Leeds method and you can quickly find how to do the Leeds method on Dana Leeds' website. Once you learn the method, which is really quite simple, then work to identify which family branch in your tree matches each DNA match group that you create. The Leeds method will help you to understand how your DNA is clustered into family groups. Then, when a DNA match messages you, instead of looking up their possible last name in common in your tree, you can go straight to the DNA family group you share and see which ancestors you have in common. The surname or family in common might surprise you both. Spend time looking at the family tree for each of your DNA matches to discover which ancestors you share. Add notes on the DNA match's DNA profile for easy reference later. Learn more about how to use DNA for genealogy. I recommend Blaine Bettinger's book, The Family Tree Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy. I recommend Diane Southard's blog at her website, yourdnaguide.com, or free DNA webinars at familytreewebinars.com. DNA education never ends, and technology is constantly advancing, so keep finding ways to learn more. Be an advocate for someone who is trying to use their DNA to find unknown family in their tree. Whatever they need, be there for them. Send messages, research information, build family trees, find more about the local history. For those with more experience, be available in your local community to help interpret DNA test results, especially for people of color. This may be something you can do through a local historical society, genealogical society, or family search center. Starting next week, I'll be giving monthly consultations at my local family search center, and they know that I specifically have a specialty in African American genealogy, and I'll be able to help people in the community with that. If you are familiar with African American genealogy and DNA, please share your expertise since there isn't enough to go around yet. Data entry usually requires a little bit of tech know-how, but these are mostly simple and repetitive tasks that could easily be done when you have an extra 10, 20, or 30 minutes to spare. These kinds of tasks can really help smooth the way for researchers and the overall work of reparative genealogy. This list is mainly specific to things that can help the work at WikiTree. However, you can also check with your local genealogical society, historical society, or other organizations who may be involved in reparative genealogy to see if they have any data entry projects you can assist with. First, create profiles for the U.S. Black Heritage Project's 1880 Census Project. I can already hear the inner question from some of you saying, wait, creating profiles from census is data entry? Isn't that genealogy? Yes, adding profiles from the 1880 census does take some basic genealogy and WikiTree know-how, but we've watched a lot of beginners catch on very quickly how to properly enter families. And this is a great way for anyone with beginner genealogy skills to improve upon your skills. We have 6.5 million people to account for from the 1880 census. That's 6.5 million African American citizens. We started this project to create more family connection points across the entire country. It has already accomplished that goal by helping us connect more families. We've completed 15 states, which are the dark green states here, and California is just a few days away. We have so far accounted for 2.2% of the 6.5 million. We have had community groups help complete counties for us, and other WikiTree projects are collaborating with us as well. And this has been a beautiful example of collaborative genealogy. WikiTree members from all over the world have stepped up to help us. Another task we need with this project is help identifying WikiTree profiles that were created before the census project was started and adding them to the corresponding location spreadsheet so we don't accidentally create duplicates. Since we check 100% of the profiles created for this project, adding them to the spreadsheet will allow us to come along later to add categories that may help people find their family more easily. More data entry tasks. Help the U.S. Black Heritage Project with specific data entry tasks. We often have a focus project that we need concentrated help with for a short period of time. If you follow our monthly newsletter, I will post those tasks there, and if you look down below, you'll see a link to how to follow our monthly newsletter. Help compare existing WikiTree profiles for people interred in African American cemeteries against the full list to see who still needs a profile that's created. We we focus very strongly on African American cemeteries because it's an excellent way to connect families. People who were buried together, families were buried together, and so it's easier to find family members through cemeteries. Help us identify African American cemeteries across the country. We are far from having a full list accounted for on WikiTree, and we need help to find the cemeteries in every state. Create spreadsheets with lists of names from document sets to assist the U.S. Black Heritage Project to account for everyone from those documents. Our project absolutely loves working with Google Sheets because we can easily work together and we can use it as a checklist to make sure no one gets missed. The 1880 Census Project is an example of how we use collaborative spreadsheets. We have a spreadsheet for every single county in every single state, and so far we have completed about 65% of those spreadsheets, getting them set up, which is going to, those spreadsheets will eventually have 6.5 million people accounted for on there. Help add categories to enslaved ancestor profiles for those who never received them. We have potentially tens of thousands not being counted right now because not every WikiTree member knows about the categories that our project uses for our enslaved ancestors. And those categories help descendants find their ancestors more easily. Help the U.S. Black Heritage Project with specific profile improvement tasks. And we have a page that's available with tasks that are constantly ongoing that you could help with. By by doing these tasks, it helps the researchers keep the data as clean and simple as possible. It also helps, as I mentioned, for people to find their ancestors more easily. We have category cleanup tasks. We have a list of categories that need to be removed since they no longer apply to that profile. We use a sticker called the African American sticker to all our profiles on WikiTree for anybody who had African ancestry. This sticker does a couple of things for us. One, it helps honor their heritage, and two, it helps people find their family more easily because they can look immediately at the profile and go, oh, that is an African American person. It might be my family. But third, it's also a code on the profile that helps us count our profiles. It's the only way that we can count all of our profiles. If a person doesn't have the sticker on their profile, they are not being counted. So we have clusters that we identify that need to have the sticker added. You could help add birth locations to family profiles without them. I'm not sure how birth locations keep getting left off profiles since usually there's a source on the profile that states the birth location. But what I do know is these people aren't getting counted in our state reports, and it makes them harder to find without the birth location. You could research and compile a list of African American notables who don't yet have a profile in WikiTree. We're always looking for more people to honor. You could also, if you have a little bit of WikiTree know-how, you could create profiles for African American notables using Wikipedia pages as a starting point. I've mentioned WikiTree quite a few times now, but maybe some of you aren't familiar yet with this website. Wikitree.com is a completely free one world tree website. This means there is only one profile per person who ever existed, and we work together to grow the research for each person. There are currently over 41 million family members accounted for on the website, and basically what we do is we crowdsource them all. We share knowledge and skills to help each other with our genealogy. There are 7 levels of privacy instead of just 2 that you find at most websites, which is living or not living. And this means you can keep your closer family members more private and not make them available for community work. Unlike Family Search, we do not have documents. Instead, you can think of us more as a workspace and a preservation space where everyone brings in the sources for each family member. We do the bulk of our work in projects, such as the U.S. Black Heritage Project, who helps set the unique standards needed for each community or people group. We also have DNA integration, which means people can enter their DNA tests that they've taken, and that filters through 8 degrees of the family tree that they have added to WikiTree, and that can be used for comparison purposes. WikiTree members give selflessly of their time and expertise to grow family trees. 99.9% of the website is run by unpaid volunteers, and I'm one of those. And now we get to genealogy. This is where we get to connect all those dots. First, add your own Black ancestors to WikiTree to add to the growing database. Why? It makes your ancestors publicly and easily available to cousins who are searching for that information. It makes it easier for cousins with more information to share that information back with you as well as other cousins. It makes it easier for the U.S. Black Heritage Project to expand those family branches as they work on record sets that pertain to that family. Let me give you an example of that last suggestion. One time I saw a change had been made to one of my German family members on WikiTree. I went and looked, and I saw that someone who was doing German genealogy had found the baptism record for that ancestor. And that baptism record named parents I didn't have. By having that ancestor's profile on WikiTree, that WikiTree member was able to easily add the new record to my family. And once I saw the update, I immediately saw the new information and was able to add another generation to my tree. So basically, a brick wall just got broken down. And this kind of thing happens every day on WikiTree. If you have enslaving ancestors, again, add them to WikiTree as well as those they enslaved, especially if you have names from wills, probate records, and other family records. Now, we do use a complicated system to document slavery on WikiTree because all the pieces do something important and special for us. So if it feels too complicated or heavy for you at this time to add that information, instead, you can send your family information to the U.S. Black Heritage Project Exchange team so they can enter it for you. Look down below for the U.S. Black Heritage Project information that will have our email address. By adding your information, your enslaving family information to WikiTree, it makes your ancestors' slavery era information easily available to descendants who are searching for the information about their enslaved ancestors. And again, it makes it easier for the U.S. Black Heritage Project to expand those family branches as they work on record sets pertaining to that family or that location, and to make connections between enslaved ancestors and their descendants. If you're ready to do reparative genealogy, join WikiTree's U.S. Black Heritage Project to research and build family trees with one of our many teams. We have many, many, many things that we need help with, and we are ready for you. If you're not ready to work on WikiTree, share your research with the U.S. Black Heritage Project. If adding families to WikiTree just feels too much for you, if adding your research seems too much, send a message to the U.S. Black Heritage Project and ask them to help you migrate the information to WikiTree. Assist Black Pearls of Genealogy by collecting additional genealogy resources available for tree building, and share those with the website owner. Black Pearls of Genealogy is basically a directory of genealogy resources, especially for people of color, and it helps them learn how to use the resources. You can Google Black Pearls of Genealogy. BPOG.org is the email address to go look at it. If nothing else, go check out the website. It's absolutely beautiful. Be available in your local community to help with genealogy, whether it's growing Black family trees or digitizing slavery era documents and information. There are many people who are not comfortable using online resources, so it's useful to have someone work with them in person. Teach basic genealogy classes in your local community, specifically to help people of color grow their trees. Speak to your local community groups about the importance of collaborative genealogy for growing the work. You could even speak to schools about genealogy and collaborative genealogy. I'm all about teaching people young. You could be a local community knowledge facilitator. Genealogists need people in communities to help with local information. Be available to the U.S. Black Heritage Project to answer questions about your local community, its history, its geography, its people, its culture. This kind of information can help with breakthroughs for tough research questions, and the project does keep a list of resource people. Seek to find out more about your local community and its history. This may be more difficult if you live in a large city, but you could begin with neighborhoods or sections of town. Organize family reunions, gatherings, or events to bring together local family groups by surname for sharing information, digitization of records, and building family trees. You could also follow up these events by hosting a monthly Zoom meeting or moderating a private Facebook group where you can share further research about new research findings to help stimulate further interest and collaboration. Advocacy helps support the work of reparative genealogy, and it helps it move forward. Again, you can follow the U.S. Black Heritage Project monthly newsletter, and you can find information about how to do that below. Follow us for updates of the progress as well as periodic tasks that we need help with. Like and follow organizations on social media who are preserving records and heritage sites. Local heritage sites and burial preservations are some groups that come to mind. Also, organizations who are doing reparative genealogy, organizations who are preserving Black history and Black narratives, and so on. Again, you don't have to donate to make a difference. Any engagement can help their grant funding efforts and can boost their public presence. Find out if there are any groups in your local area who are dedicated to the preservation of Black history and heritage, of Black narratives, Black stories, etc., and volunteer your time with them. Find out if there are any current community projects in your area to uncover the truth about a historical event or account for a group of people, and especially erased cemeteries and Black massacres. The Tulsa Massacre is one example, or even archaeological digs. Volunteer your time or money to help their efforts. Donate money to any groups who are dedicated to the preservation of Black history and heritage, narratives, and stories, or are doing reparative genealogy. Assist with fundraising. Maybe grant writing is one of your strengths, and there are many nonprofits who desperately need grant writers to help them fundraise. Fundraise for groups who are dedicated to the preservation of Black history, heritage, narrative stories, and reparative genealogy. Speak to local groups about reparative genealogy, why it's needed, and how people can help. Especially help by sharing their slavery era family information or documents. Publish information about reparative genealogy and its role in healing the country, whether through academic journals, books, community newsletters, or blogs, or in this case, a YouTube channel. Seek out a list of as many Black cemeteries in your local community as you can find. This may require speaking to local churches, historical societies, or even scanning through older death certificates from different time periods. Find their physical location. What physical state are the cemeteries in? If the cemetery needs repair, consider speaking to your local government about helping with that. If it just needs cleanup, talk to the cemetery owners or local church connected to the cemetery about organizing a community cleanup day. If you discover the cemetery has been paved over or in any way erased, speak to other groups who have advocated for erased cemeteries to see what the first steps are to advocate for families connected to the cemetery. It's important to make the public aware of this kind of erasure, and this kind of erasure is it's everywhere. It's all across the country, and everyone needs to be aware this has happened, and in some cases is actually still happening. Be a support person for someone researching their own enslaved family history. Whatever they need to make their job easier, just be there for them. Talk to your local genealogy society groups about including more speakers of color and more speakers on the topic of genealogy for marginalized communities, especially African American genealogy. They should have speakers all year round, not just during Black History Month or other community group celebration months. They should ask genealogists of color to speak on general topics, not just ones that apply to their community. In example, African American genealogists don't need to just be speaking about African American genealogy. They have many skills and expertise to share. Help your local group change the narrative around genealogy for people of color. Genealogy for people of color should be an everyday part of the genealogy community and not considered as other. Create or contribute to scholarship funds that enable people from marginalized communities to access genealogical resources, DNA tests, or professional genealogical services. Sometimes there's a lot of resources available to do genealogy for free, such as FamilySearch.org, but sometimes there are simply things that need to be paid for, and we don't want that to be a barrier between a person trying to build their family tree. Support or mentor young people of color from your local community to pursue a career in genealogy, anthropology, historical research, or other similar fields to bring in more diverse genealogical experts. This is a topic that's been very heavy on my own heart lately and something I'm personally considering, because one way to make genealogy for people of color an everyday part of the genealogy community is to have more professionals who are people of color. So in any way that we can help support that, let's do that. Although what I call reparative advocacy doesn't necessarily help reparative genealogy directly, by researching the information, it may help bring to light new information about families as well as the local culture, which may help connect more families in the long run. It can also help with repair and healing. Find out what Jim Crow or Reconstruction era laws are still on the books in your community, county, or state, and lobby to remove them. There are still many, many, many old racist laws on the books, and they can be used to continue racist actions. Support efforts to revive and honor traditional names, languages, practices, and cultural identities in your local area that were suppressed or altered through slavery and racism. Find out what locations on your local map, such as streets, creeks, neighborhoods, towns, etc., still have racist or offensive names, and advocate to change those names. This has been an ongoing effort nationwide, but there is still much work to be done. Find out the history of the names. You might be surprised at their true beginnings. Research land ownership histories, particularly for communities affected by land theft or displacement. Assist in tracing the histories of ancestral or family lands and help families reclaim historical property rights or to connect with land restitution programs. Work with local museums, universities, and other institutions to identify and repatriate cultural artifacts, remains, or personal items to the descendant communities. This is just a short list of tasks you could complete that would make a difference in meeting the goals of reparative genealogy. I hope that you thought of a few more while I was talking. But can reparative genealogy really meet any of its goals? Will this work eventually actually get us there? It sometimes feels like we're down here on Earth and our goal is 1,000,000 miles away out there in the universe. I often hear statements like these. I doubt you can connect all enslaved ancestors to their families in my lifetime or even the next. Maybe you can help a few families, but I don't think you can help mine. I'd be just happy to get past the 1870 census. Can we really repair all the trees? Can we make a family tree easily accessible to every family? If we use an average of 10 people in a family, that's a minimum of 1 million enslaved families. That feels impossible at the moment, doesn't it? But I'm unapologetically an optimist. Maybe we can't do all that today or this year or even next year, but one thing to keep in mind is the work is cumulative. The more families we bring together and the more information we make easily accessible to descendants, the easier it is to connect even more family members into existing trees, and more descendants will be working on their family trees online, which in turn makes more family information available to others. We've already seen this snowball effect taking place in the U.S. Black Heritage Project. What are some successes that we've seen? We've seen many enslaved ancestors connected to their families for the first time online, possibly even the first time since the time of slavery. We've seen an increase in online documents that are available. More and more are coming online every day, which in turn makes the work easier. A large number of descendants are making use of the information we've made available on WikiTree. And we know this because we're seeing a huge increase in people contacting us to ask questions. More people are comfortably talking about using slavery-era documents, maybe even those of their own family, to build trees for enslaved ancestors. We have the ability to more quickly find family and ancestors for people. In just the last 5 years, we have just seen how each year it just cumulatively gets easier and easier as we connect more people together. More research projects are contacting us to collaborate so their research can be made freely available to descendants. And I'd like to end with one of our many success stories. This is a perfect example of the kind of work we do and how it brings success. I was working with a new genealogy client who was trying to prove why land had been passed down to her family from a woman who was born in 1852, who I will call Jane. The client knew of no family connection and they needed to update the legal paperwork, but they had nothing to work with. One of the first things I did was I built the client's tree back in time on WikiTree to see how far I could get. And then I also built the family tree for Jane. The first amazing thing that happened when I went to add parents for Jane is I encountered existing profiles for those parents. And these parents were born in 1816 and 1823. On their profiles, they had information about the plantation they had lived on in South Carolina, as well as more kids, a list of more kids named than what I had been able to discover. So I reached out to Michelle Detweiler, who created the plantation page and is also one of the plantation experts in the U.S. Black Heritage Project. I asked if she might have any more information on the family, and she did. Thanks to her research, we were able to determine that Jane was in fact the sister of my client's second great-grandmother. So the land had actually been passed down from aunt to niece. Michelle dug a little deeper into the records and, even more exciting, found the parents of Jane's father, and these parents were born in 1774 and 1778. So we were able to add not only 2 generations to my client's tree, but 2 generations of enslaved ancestors. And there are more records to work with, so we may be able to continue over time. This success would not have been possible without the collaborative effort of people working with different record sets. I was working with more modern records, and Michelle was working with older legal records. My client now had the information she needed about the right to own the land, plus she had 2 generations of new family. Success in reparative genealogy does not look like this. It's not a steep and fast climb upward until, boom, we've hit the goal all at once. That would be great and nice. Instead, it looks more like this. Many people coming together and sharing pieces of information, which I have called dots today. Then finding how some of those pieces fit with each other. Then more pieces are added, growing a network, and so on. And eventually we will have all of the pieces, well, most of the pieces at least, because some will never be able to be discovered, but most of the pieces, and everyone will be connected. I believe we will get there, and we will get there faster if everyone helps.